Well, good morning and welcome to the April 8th edition of Issues That Matter. And today we're going to be talking about a subject that a lot of people face later on in life, both personally as well as a family member, that can be very, very, very challenging and very difficult, needless to say. But the people that we have online on air today are people that can be very, very helpful in helping people negotiate their way through the complex maze that they may end up having to negotiate later on in life. And my guests today are Sally Tart,
Thank you.
Jennifer Borders, and they are with let's see, they're with The First Step.
A place to start.
A place up. See, I messed up already.
That's okay. We're here to.
But it'll be on the air. A place to start.
Yes.
And a place to start at their offices in Kennebunk. And I'm sure they'll be telling us about it as we proceed. But Sally, Jennifer, welcome.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks for
Matter.
having us.
Thank you.
Issues that matter. How did you get, not issues that matter, a place to start? Mm-hmm. I told you I'd make my share of mistakes. How did you get involved with this organization?
My mom, Connie, was diagnosed with Alzheimer's, and we as a family went through the journey. As you said, it's very difficult. It's very different than a lot of diseases. It's really a family disease because you have to start making choices for loved ones that become very difficult. We were always in crisis. Even I had a very supportive family. There were 5 siblings. We had resources, and we were still always putting out fires. You know, her situation changed quite a bit. You think things were going okay, and then things would happen. So she ended up passing away from complications from Alzheimer's. And after she passed away, I reached out to the Alzheimer's Association. I don't know why after, but it was just a crazy disease. And I got talking to the social worker, and they asked me to do some advocacy work for them. I did some speaking about how hard it is for families. And then I also got on the Maine State Plan for Alzheimer's and Dementia. I represented family members, and I'd go up to Augusta and sit around this big round table of all these resources that are out there. And from that, I got families don't know about you. You know, there's some great resources out there, but families are always in the trench. They don't even know what they need to know. There's no navigation on this. So after I left that, I just kind of thought, you know, families deserve more. You're pretty much given a diagnosis. It's kind of like any other, you know, like I likened my dad had cancer, and at least there was a protocol, there was a navigation system, there were appointments, there was treatment. With Alzheimer's, there's nothing. You get a diagnosis and you're kind of sent on your way. And so we felt like there was a little niche there where we could meet with families where they're at, and that's kind of how a place to start, because everyone's family's at a different point in the journey, and that's where we started.
Yep. Jennifer, how did you get involved with this?
Well, I've been a friend of Sally's for years and years. Our children are friends. And I saw her go through this with her mom. You know, it was difficult. And after kind of, let's say, the dust settled, after Connie passed away and she got involved going up to Augusta and things like that, she was really passionate about it. She was really passionate about trying to do something. And so she started, you know, a nonprofit. And she said, you know, I'm doing this. I have a fundraising background, event planning, and, you know, it started very small and just, you know, I was on the board for a little bit, for a few years actually. And then, you know, as a place to start grew, the board grew and kind of the needs grew. I took a position as marketing and development coordinator, kind of just, I mean, it was still very 3 people, you know, it's not a huge organization, but kind of taking some of that stuff off of Sally's plates, because what she's really good at, what she enjoys, and what really needs to happen is really meeting with the families and you know, helping them out. So I took some of the businessy end stuff off of that, her plate. So that's how I got involved.
Having dealt with it from afar, I would say, I have to admit, because I was up here in Maine, my mother and father were down in Florida. I have a sister down in Florida who carried the majority of the weight. But what are some of the things that people can do earlier on in life that might make their years later on a little bit easier for them, as well as for the rest of their family.
With a dementia diagnosis, if
Yeah.
that's really what we do, and that's a great question, because when I meet with a family, I really try and be proactive and make a plan. Unfortunately, the disease progresses. There's no cure. There's no treatment. So to stick your head in the sand is really hard. I would say most families don't deal with it as quickly as they should, because you can have a good quality of life living with dementia. But unfortunately, we're seeing crisis usually where something needs to happen, either placement or home care. But I think once you get a diagnosis, I think just making a plan, get power of attorney, health directives done, check out the local home care places, make a plan, get all your documents together and be ready. You don't know the journey ahead, but I think the more you can do ahead of time, meet with us and we can happy to help with that.
And speaking to that, another thing, even before that, we feel, and Sally sees it a lot more than I do, but that, Alzheimer's is not something that people sit around and talk about. It's just not, even when after there's a diagnosis. I've been in a line at the store, and the person behind me was chatting with a friend, and like, my father has the big A, like whispering it. And so even before there's a diagnosis, just have a conversation about it, with your older loved ones. How would you want that handled if that ever was you? Or say to your kids, this is, if this ever happened to me, this is, just have a conversation about it.
Starting the conversation
is the most important part.
As Jen said, even when I'm working with clients, their caregiver will reach out to me, but it's almost like denial of the patient that they don't have it. So they come to us and kind of do things behind the scenes, whereas instead of working together, it's just a lot of stigma. We go back to, I'll go out speaking or go to like a senior expo, and there's all these great resources, and people come to me and, well, what do you do? And I said, Alzheimer's. It's like, oh, no, it's still that we can't talk about it.
Right.
And I think if we can talk more about it and be open about it, it's not a death sentence. And I think we really want to get across that you can have a quality of life. That's great.
Not talking about it is not going to stave it off.
No,
Right.
no.
And if you wait until your family member's in crisis and they can't make their own decisions, it's even harder on the caregiver trying to make a decision like where to place them if that's what they need to do. It's just, if you haven't already had that discussion, and Sally actually was pretty lucky in the fact that her mom was in a position to make a decision where she wanted to live, where she wanted to, in assisted living. And, but if you wait too long, then there's a lot more of that angst and maybe guilt about making those decisions for your mom or your dad or your grandmother and not knowing if this is really what they want.
Now, and I know I'm not mistaken about this, but we do, as a society, in Maine in particular, because that's where we live, we are facing a maelstrom of problems relative to people getting older and suffering from some form of senile dementia, and we have a shortage of beds. What is it that we do? What can we do to help stave that problem off? You might say. Planning.
I think planning, and I think the state. I mean, we are the oldest state in the nation. And we're even seeing younger early onset, meaning between like 50 and 62. So that's a whole different, issue, is that I think, the state legislatures are going to have to deal with it. If someone needs a main care bed, it's very hard to find. I mean, you might live down here in Kennebunk, but there's no bed. I mean, maybe up in Presque Isle. Like, the system just isn't working. I don't have an answer for it, but I do think, we can't bury our head in the sand anymore. I think being proactive too and getting help at home will keep you home a lot longer. That's kind of a model that people are trying to do, no place like home, where you have more supports in the community. And that way you can be home, but your caregiver gets help and gets respite, would be one suggestion, if you have any.
Yep. Well, that as we were talking before the show went on, we have legislation pending. That's one of the things it's designed to do, is to help people stay in their home, because that's where people want to stay.
Right.
They'd rather not have to go into a nursing home, even a very nice facility such as Huntington Common. They don't want to go there. They want to stay at home.
And how can we make that happen? And I think, again, planning and talking about it and knowing what the resources are is important.
What would you say are some of the early signs that a family should be looking for?
Yeah, we get that question a lot where, oh, is it just normal aging? And dementia is not normal aging. And again, I just want to clarify, I'm not a doctor, I'm not a professional. So what I see, I can tell you is that, we all forget where our keys are. We all forget, where my phone is. But if you forget what happened that morning, what did you have for breakfast? That type of thing is an early sign. Losing your car, forgetting where you park, forgetting appointments. Those are the little things that kind of start. I think of my mom, those were kind of the things that started. But then red flags were, she would call, she lived alone, she would call, and she was looking for my dad. He wasn't home yet from work. He had passed away 15 years earlier. So that jolts you, like that type of thing. They cover a lot for themselves. My mom always joked, and so they come up with these strategies because I don't think they know really what's going on. Those were big ones. And then she would start calling, looking for the kids. They're not home from school yet, meaning me, who I'm 40 at this point. She's waiting for me to get off the bus. So those, you kind of lose sense of reality and time.
And my assumption is that your siblings also had the same interactions with your mother.
Friends notice. I think sometimes friends we've noticed. I know in my case, her friends that lived near her reached out to us. And I know some of the earlier onset, the workplace, people have found that something's going on. Their work capacity has changed. So I think other people tend to notice sometimes, not just family. And we're hoping to educate our community at least on signs and how to work with people with dementia.
And I think the important thing also is not to give up on finding out what the problem is, because a tremendous amount of people are misdiagnosed, especially early onset, because it just isn't even on the radar yet.
Depression.
And so, and people have told us, their mother will go for their doctor's appointment, and that day they're having a good day, and the doctor's like, she's fine, she's just getting old. But that's not really it. So keeping on it and making sure that the proper diagnosis,
Right. Because I think I've worked with a few families where it's taken like 4 to 5 years to get a diagnosis. The only way to really diagnose in the medical field is an autopsy. They can do testing and they have the memory.
And that would be a high price to pay.
Yes. So a lot of times it's misdiagnosed, and you really have to be an advocate. If you're really feeling there's something, there's just something not there, be persistent.
I could see there's a conflict there. On the one hand, you want to be an advocate.
Right, but you don't really want to be.
On the other hand, you don't want to pretend that you have the answer.
Right.
When the doctors
Right.
don't.
Right.
So I could very easily see a conflict there.
It's tricky.
What would you say are some of the early steps that a family can take to soften the blow, you might say?
I think educating yourself of what's out there, especially resources, and as Jen said, have the conversations, have a dialogue, have a family meeting. This is what we're dealt with. Let's make a plan. And I think coming to see us would be good, but I think just starting there is huge, because I can't reiterate that we don't see people until they're way down the road. And leave the doctor's office and call a family meeting and let's figure it out.
What is it that you folks do? I know we've talked about you help people, wander down the road, one might say. But what services do you folks provide?
So
Place to start.
Okay, so we're a free service. We don't charge for anything. And hence the name, A Place to Start. We really thought about that, is that you're starting your journey wherever that point is. So we didn't cookie cutter our services. What would work for you isn't going to work for Jen. So basically it's consulting with a family. They'll come to us at any point in their journey, and we listen, and I put together a plan for them. I connect them with resources. We have a lending library. We have, I'll tour facilities with families, to our adult day programs, pretty much what they need just to get them on their way. You know, it's kind of a starting place. And some come back and and some I do the whole journey with. There's no specific plan. And now we have a place to gather as well. So we've been doing this over 3.5 years. We started consulting, I call it consulting and navigating. And then we really have wanted to be more part of a community to get the dialogue going and get people talking about Alzheimer's. And a space opened up on Main Street in Kennebunk. And we have been there a month maybe. So we kind of describe it as a senior center for families with Alzheimer's and dementia. We're going to be offering programming. It's socialization for families because, again, you feel really isolated as a family. It's really hard. I think with my mom, we'd drive by the beach or, you know, look for something to do. And we're hoping families will come into our safe, inviting space, and we'll have music therapy and like snack and chats and just activities for families.
Yep. The work that you do is incredibly important. And I suspect very strongly incredibly helpful because I know the impact that it has on the family unit, and it can tear the family. It can
Right.
tear the family unit apart because a lot of emotions get involved, and emotions are something that people cannot control.
Right.
Yeah. Speaking to just some of the things that Sally was saying, you know, if someone's watching this thinking, I don't know if I should call, you know, people call us for the smallest things. You know, I mean, I remember a woman called and talked to Sally just about, you know, her husband's in a assisted living or in a memory care unit, but every time she leaves, he wants to go home with her. And it's heartbreaking for her, for the caregiver. And so she is just, you know, called Sally and just talked it out. Like, give me, you know, we just gave her strategies. He really likes pictures. She brought, you know, photo albums from home and brought it out at the last, you know, I'm leaving and why don't you look at this to divert his attention. I mean, I don't know if we ever heard from her again, you know, but that's what she needed at that time. Then we have families that will call and just, you know, everyone will come in, they'll figure out, you know, what kind of, you know, memory care unit they want to look at. Sally will go to meet with all those, make sure they ask all the right questions, make sure financially it's something that they can do, and meet with them every month and, you know, for years. So it's really, I mean, people should call with there's no question too small.
Right.
And sometimes even just talking to Sally and our other colleague Diana about, you know, just about what they're going through. If they have nobody else who's gone through it, it's really, there's no one who can understand it as well as, you know, another caregiver, another person who's gone through it. And sometimes all they really need is just to talk it out. One phone call, it makes them feel a lot better. We set them in the right direction, you know, and so it's important to reach out for help, especially if you're still at home where sometimes caregivers are as constricted as, you know, the patient is because they can't leave that person alone. It's unlike any other disease, you know, cancer or something where their body gives up, but their mind is still there. It's opposite. They're, you know, still vibrant, you know, and so it's hard, you know, it's hard for them to get out even to go to a support group. It's hard for them to get out to do anything for themselves. So place to gather, which is the sub kind of care thing of a place to start, is a place where they can all come together, where the caregiver can meet other people going through this and talk and just be in a, you know, different set of walls and kind of have a time with their loved one. But
Do you have scheduled times that when you have these group gatherings?
It's on our website, but right now they're Monday and Wednesdays from 10 to 1. We're open hours, and then Tuesday from 10 to 12, and Thursday 1 to 3, Sunday 1 to 3, and it's all on our website. But we will be doing updating calendars. We started slow. We wanted people just to kind of come in and see the space, feel comfortable, kind of see what we're about, and we're working on our May calendar where we're adding some programming, like we're adding an informational session from an elder lawyer who's going to talk about power of attorneys, health directives. We have a occupational therapist that's going to talk about home safety and how to make a home safe, for, you know, what to look for. We have a music therapist that's going to do a session. And we have a healing session. We're offering mini facials for family, the caregiver and the family member. And this is all free. So we really hope people take advantage of it. And again, if they go to our website, at a place to start for dementia, it will always be listed on the homepage.
We'll also have hours open, just open hours for when there's events in downtown Kennebunk so that families can still come and enjoy those, but still have a place close by that they can go to, just to, if someone, if their loved one needs to just rest or, to get out of the craziness for a little bit, but they can still, see music at the plaza, or there's always things at Waterhouse, Farmers Market, things like that. So all that would also be on the website as well when there's special events going on downtown.
Is the practice of socialization, I'll call it, is that helpful in staving off the effects of Alzheimer's?
I'm not sure about that, but I think it is proven that being with other people is stimulating, and in the moment, it brings them, I think, a good, safe feeling, and I think it does help with agitation and being isolated. I think being isolated isn't really a good thing for any human. So music, we have a little music player, that really stimulates some good feelings. What we've noticed, and again, I'm not a physician, but if you can, in the moment, feeling good, you're going to leave there and have probably a good rest of the day because you're feeling good, you're not anxious. You're not going to remember, maybe I was at a place to gather, or I met this other woman, but I think the feeling and for the caregiver, that's huge too. This person at least got out and was part of the community, and it's kind of an informal support session where the caregiver we could work with them while their loved one is doing an activity. So it's kind of a dual purpose. And it's not just for Kennebunk residents. I just want to be clear
Right,
that
it's
we're based in Kennebunk, but York County, Cumberland County, I mean, we've helped people up north, so.
How prevalent is Alzheimer's or senile dementia in the Kennebunk, the southern Maine area? Do you get a lot of people from?
Yes, we have 2 memory care facilities right in town, and then there's a lot of home care places that are taking care of people at home. I know in Maine, when I was on the state plan, there was over 37,000 living with, this is the state, and projected by 2020, there was supposed to be about 53,000. So that's a lot of people in the state of Maine that are going to be dealing with this. So.
And we already have a shortage of beds.
Short of bed, short of help cost. I mean, a lot of people can't even afford cost at home for respite. Even 2 or 3 hours costs people, that would be like almost $100 for them to go to the grocery store without their loved ones. So we've got to come up with some different.
And it's impacting those family members. People are taking days off work. People are losing jobs, because they can't leave their loved one home alone,
And I think the statistic is 40% of caregivers will pass before their loved one. So between the stress, the loneliness, the anxiety that's placed on a caregiver is really powerful.
Depressing.
It is depressing. We
depressing.
see the caregivers that come in, and it's heart-wrenching, what people are doing at home.
And that's why we that is why we opened a place to gather, because we, especially Sally and Diana, see all these people, and they're at home dealing with this.
Now, on your website, one of the testimonials that I read talked about the assistance that you gave to this particular family with negotiating, you might say, with Hudson Common. Mm-hmm. Is that a service that you provide routinely?
Yeah, that was a crisis situation, and I worked with the adult children and the husband of this particular case, and what happened is the woman was not safe at home anymore, so she couldn't go home. So they had to do a placement very quickly. It was very emotional. It's probably one of the most emotional. They've been married 60 years, but we held a meeting with the staff, and we held the meeting with the family, and the husband was just heart-wrenched, that he couldn't take care of her anymore. He's crying, we're crying, but it ended up being a good, as good as it could be situation, but that's something that I do. I think because facilities are such, even when we toured, we were like, no way is my mom going to end up in the memory unit. We're still thinking she's not going to progress. And I always tell people the disease progresses and it ended up being the best place for her. They're trained, they're kind, they're safe. We always go to safety and dignity. What does that look like for families? And we can't all do it all. You know, I mean, we were going to build additions on the house. We were going to keep her, and I had little kids. And, you know, ultimately, we were glad that she had made the choice for herself, and that was really helpful.
In Kennebunk, and I'm not giving an advertisement of any type, but as far as based on my knowledge, we have 2 facilities in Kennebunk that specialize in this. And from my knowledge, which is very limited, no doubt, about a lot of things, we have 2 fine facilities with Atria and Huntington Common. If one wants to point to a downside, which is unavoidable, they're costly.
They're very costly. We were fortunate. My mom had long-term care insurance, but not many people have that. And I don't know if people know the cost, but when you're hitting like the memory care units, you're starting about at the lower end about $5,000 a month, and going up to about $9,000 to $10,000 a month with continuum of care.
Incredible.
It's
scary,
it is scary.
especially people of might be climbing up a little bit.
Well, I think they said, anyone with a brain is susceptible.
Right.
You know, it doesn't discriminate, unfortunately.
Yep.
Right.
So there are other options other than, so that's one of the things that we do is tell people, obviously a lot of people can't afford that. So what's another option?
Right, and we don't, right, when I meet with the family, if I know financially that's not an option, I won't show them that. You know, that's like showing you the Christmas that you can't have. We find very good resources for families that, depending on what their financial state is as well.
Yep. I wish my daughter was here.
She can watch the tape.
And we might have talked about this before, but I forgot about it. What are some of the early indications that a family, again, should be looking for? If we talked about it before, my sense
Then
is
we'll call your daughter at the end of the
show. It's important enough to talk about it again.
Yeah.
Because people should remember it.
Well, I think people have a sense. You really have a sixth sense. And if something's not right, don't let it go. Don't chalk it up to regular growing old. There's actually a wonderful Teepa Snow. On YouTube. Her name is Teepa Snow, and she does like a great video of what's dementia and what's not. If you forget your keys, you forget what you walked into a room for, but you can walk back and then you remember, you get visual clues or things then that's okay. So we're good. But, if you walk into a room, you forget why you're there, and then all of a sudden you decide that people are walking into their house and taking your cups and that's not right. That's not right. And so if you start hearing some really wacky stories or things that just aren't right, just follow up on it. Just follow up. And, because you really want to get ahead of it, because if it turns into a crisis situation or if your loved one is unsafe, how many times do we hear that someone's missing, they've walked off, someone drove and couldn't find where they're going, so you don't want to get to that point.
Some of the conversations I have about safety and things going at home, and the answer is, oh, not yet. And to me, that's not a good plan. Not yet she hasn't wandered, or not yet she hasn't fallen, or not yet. So I think, again, thinking of those things in your head, okay, how can we prevent these things from happening?
Yep. Well, before I forget, which is not an unusual circumstance with me, in any event, before I do want to give some details as far as that legislation that we have pending, because it's LD 365. Right now it's sitting on the appropriations table in the state legislature. Last year it was tabled and held over for this year. This year, because of the political back and forth that's routinely up in Augusta, our concern is that it's going to be tabled again. So it's critical that people contact their representatives and their senators and let them know how important this might be to them. If not today, tomorrow, or some point in the future. And it is designed to help people carry the cost of modifications to a person's home for safety or accessibility reason, so that they can stay in the house longer. And that's where people really want to stay. They'd rather not have to go into a facility. They want to stay in their home, which is their most comfortable environment, which I have to assume, and I'll ask you folks, to be in a comfortable environment is critically important when it's available. Because it is a big benefit to be in that comfortable environment. Am I correct?
Yeah, I mean, a lot of times we hear, people want to go home, even if they are home. This is one thing that I've learned, and again, not a professional, but families struggle with that, whether their loved one is placed in a facility or whether they're living at home and the person is like, I want to go home, and they're like, you are home, or you are. It's a feeling inside. Home is, we've decided, is like a feeling, a comfort. And so whatever that comfort is will feel like home to them, I think.
Yep. Well, it's incredibly important out there. If we were to have one topic or one thing that we discussed today that you would really want people to remember, what might it be? Sally?
I think reach out to us or to the medical field. Be proactive, because you can live with dementia and you can have a good quality of life, and that's what we try and help you do. And unfortunately, the conversation just needs to start, and we need to talk about it and have it out there. That, to me, I think is the most important thing.
Yeah, we certainly don't want to leave people with a doomsday impression, because it is, like Sally says, manageable to a degree, and just not to be afraid to reach out. Our services are completely free. Everything we do is donation and sponsorship based. So, there's no reason not to just call, and there's other people going through it. You're not alone, even though it seems like they might be. It's a lot more people probably than you even think that are going through it, because it's not something you discuss, like we said originally. So when you start discussing it, you start talking, you might find people you didn't even realize, that could be supportive and support system
Ignoring the
for
issue
you.
is not going to have the issue disappear.
And it's not going to help anyone.
It's only going to make it worse at the time that you finally have to recognize it.
Right.
Well, so everybody should put their planning hats on and do what they need to do to avoid the confusion and the maelstrom that they're going to run into.
Take the
at
stigma
some
away.
point.
No one. It was like cancer used to be, or AIDS, and we really want to take the stigma away from it. And if that message can get across, that used to be the same way. No one, the C word, or the, and it's come a long way. Alzheimer's is doing a lot of research. There's a lot of hope out there. So I think let's just talk about it and see what, be passionate about it and live with it.
Yep. Well, I want to thank you both for coming in today and talking to us about this.
Thank you for having us.
It's my pleasure.
Thank you very
Thank you
much.
very much. What you're doing is incredibly important work.
Thank you.
And the fact that you do it in the fashion that you do, which is I'll say a family fashion. I've been in your facility a couple or a few times, and it's a very relaxing facility, very laid back.
Very laid
No
back.
pressure.
No pressure, right?
And I am one who's sensitive to pressure.
Yeah, we hope that you felt like you're in a living room, someone's
Yep.
house, and we hope that's how it feels.
No, it was very, very, very enjoyable when I stopped in. But thank you very much.
Thank you.
And folks, we covered some important topic today. It's an incredibly important topic, and the more you give thought to it, the more you address it, the easier it's going to be on everybody involved. With that, I want to wish you a farewell for the day, and I'll see you again next week. And be safe, and have a good time, and simplify your life. And one of the things that you can simplify your life by is by planning ahead, so that you can minimize the number of surprises that you might run into off into the future. Thank you, and goodbye.